Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, one and all. Thanks for joining us in the edition number 15 of the BRM Brown Bag. I'm your host, Suresh GP. Today, I have an esteemed friend and a guest joining from Chicago, Tiffany Perkins. And our topic for today is around BRM in the supply chain. So thanks, Tiffany, for taking your time today and sharing your valuable insights. So how are you doing? And hope everything is well at your end.
Yeah, thank you very much. I definitely appreciate the invitation. And hello, everyone else as well who's tuning in. Um, I'm coming back from a long holiday weekend, so fresh and super enthusiastic about today's conversation. I hope all is well on your end also.
Excellent. So one of the things that I've been asking, one of the things is about just to give our viewers your introduction about your journey towards BRM and how did you land up in the supply chain, because that's a very cohesive function. There's so many moving parts around it. So how did you get along to that element? So we would like to hear from your experience and your journey for the last 19 plus years.
Yeah, thank you. So, as you've indicated, I am a 19-year IT professional. I've only recently, in the last few months, transitioned from IT into the business, so within the supply chain organization. And what's great about my journey is that I've been kind of building up over the past almost 20 years to this point. I started my career as a software developer, but in order to be a value added member of the team, it was very critical for me to accrue a level of business acumen. And so simply taking your design that's been handed to you and coding it and then testing it was not the best approach to ensuring that you were meeting and exceeding customer expectations. And so as part of that, I learned quite a bit about logistics and supply chain, in that the company that I worked for, I worked in their logistics subsidiary. So, in doing so, as I progressed my career with that employer, had roles such as Six Sigma Black Belt, project management, and with each one of those progressions, it really propelled me to the official title of a business relationship manager because throughout my entire journey, I was always acting as a BRM,
Right.
although I didn't necessarily have the official title, but becoming an expert, not only just from a from an IT perspective, but really delving in and understanding the end to end components that make up the supply chain processes, whereas earth shattering and kind of changing the dynamics and trajectory of my career.
Excellent. So tell us a bit of a context around. We have seen BRM for IT, we have seen BRM for HR, finance. So how is that different from people who do not know a lot about supply chains? I thought anything around supply chain is too many aspects to juggle around. So what are some of the facets between a supply chain function that you would need to get your heads around throughout the entire value chain?
Yeah. So supply chain and BRM within supply chain is very similar to in other areas, actually, right? It's really understanding and having those foundational steps and understanding those end-to-end integrations of just basic understanding of what does it mean to be a value added member, right? So in any organization, supply chain is also a cost center of sorts,
Right.
which
Correct.
similar to IT, similar to finance, it's a back end operation. And so business relationship management is very similar within the supply chain organization. But what is different is that you are a specialist. You are definitely needing to understand the inputs and the dependencies on your finance organization and any of the downstream impacts of the changes and decisions that you're actually making. And strategically, you're looking at what's happening within the marketplace and how you can remain competitive. What is the new technology? What's the new business processes? What is exciting external customers or whatever market the business that you're working for is actually in? So you're really focusing on those areas.
And that's a great point. Now, do you think this BRM as a capability is more focused on these internal functions, or do you think that or it's more prevalent as you've seen in the industries towards external client-facing roles. What's your take around BRM serving the internal business partner towards external client-facing roles?
It's a little bit of both. It's definitely a little bit of both. You can't do one without understanding what's required for the other. However, from a supply chain perspective, you are often looking internally on wanting to ensure that you are operating as efficiently as possible behind the scenes to get the product to the customer or the partner that you're actually providing products or services to in a timely manner.
Right. And so, do you think there's an organization that you've worked with? Should an organization have tactical and strategic BRMs, or sometimes it's just tactical that is more than sufficient? Or should we have only strategic BRMs? So, what's your take around having both tactical and strategic? Are they having place in both these companies? I mean, as a from what you have seen?
Yeah, I've seen more tactical BRMs than I have seen strategic BRMs. And prior to transitioning from IT into supply chain, I was wanting to spend more of my time within the strategic BRM space. Um, I personally feel that when you're sitting in a business function, so when the BRM capability is sitting within a business function, you have more of an opportunity to be strategic, a strategic BRM, because you are owning and operating and providing support to your particular component of the strategy. And
Right.
IT is quite challenging to do so because you're behind the scenes, and often the strategy is to grow your business. And although technology is a key part in helping to grow the business, that's not how it's oftentimes interpreted. And IT is typically just brought along for as a passenger on the journey. But
Right.
with it, when sitting in supply chain, you have an opportunity to be more strategic. And so examples of even of being strategic over being tactical is where you're understanding what are other businesses doing to position their distribution centers or their distribution network to be able to get the products to your customers, your end customers, whomever that may be, your products or services, as fast as possible, as efficiently as possible.
Right.
How can it be more seamless? Over the last few years, as technology has improved, so has the level of convenience that people want to have. They want to be able to place an order for whatever product or service and have it there pretty much the next day.
Right.
Um, and within supply chain, to understand and to grow strategically, you need to understand where you want to go and how you need to support the revenue and profit projections of your company.
Yeah, that's nice. And when you talk about IT, again, we talk a lot about how can IT do help with strategic alignment, if not convergence, that Aaron Barnes always illustrates in all his conversations. So are we still talking about alignment, Tiffany, or there is a focus towards convergence when it comes to IT and you know business partnership? Where are we in this journey? Are we
Yeah.
already into that space?
Yeah, I think we're still at the alignment component. And so that's where I also did not completely answer the previous question of strategic versus tactical. And
Right.
so being in the business function, there's definitely the opportunity to be more strategic because you do definitely understand how you directly link to and support the strategy of the business. But from a tactical perspective, you need someone to also execute and support and champion what has already been defined from a strategic perspective. And so that's where IT often comes into play is once the strategy has been defined because oftentimes IT does not have a seat at the table just yet
Right.
to help provide input into the strategy. But where they can be very effective is in the execution of the strategy and helping to ensure that you're being a connector, that you're orchestrating as a BRM to tie to get everyone together and to ensure that there is a seamless end-to-end process that's being created. Um, Sadly, I mean, it's a marathon, it's not a sprint, and it takes a lot of change at a higher level to ensure that all parties have equity,
Right.
into the strategy. Everyone equally owns it and understands how they play in it. And so until that happens, we'll be sitting in the alignment instead of conversions.
Right.
But there's been quite a bit of progress made over the past, I would say, 5 to 10 years as positioning IT to be more to us for us to be on that converging path versus just simply trying to align.
So if you had asked the question, Tiffany, about your business partner, how has their world changed at the advent of BRM? What would they give you? Have you done the kind of the model of the relationship maturity model on a scale of 0 to 5 from ad hoc to a strategic partner? Where do you think that the business would tell you in terms of the value that they gain from BRM? What are some of the real quantifiable value that you think a business partner would have achieved over a period of time having BRM
Yeah.
functions and capabilities?
And so my current employer, um, as a regional resource, so the company is not headquartered in the US where I am set. And as a regional resource, supporting the Americas market when I was officially in an IT BRM capability or role, it was one where it definitely the value and the perception has shifted from being simply being an order taker to being a partner.
Right,
But that wasn't across the board.
right,
You were seen as that evolution was seen as um, being a partnership in areas where that particular market felt that they had more control.
right,
So,
right,
for example, supply chain is a great one, is one of those areas, and is also one of the reasons why I was able to transition from IT to the business
right.
as it relates to just being an advocate and helping to shift the pendulum from being seen as an order taker to a strategic partner. And what does that even look like? Prior to me joining the organization and this business relationship management capability, although not under that official title being in place, IT was seen as a black hole. Things go in, sometimes they drop out on the other side. Fingers crossed, toes crossed, eyes crossed.
Right. You know,
Um,
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, but then with having me in place, or someone the role in place and the BRM capability in place, it no longer became being a order taker and having quite a bit of business acumen and supply chain when I was approached for support on a project, or if there's a question about how something works. I always took a step to understand, well, what are you ultimately trying to achieve? Because a consumer of a service, oftentimes, they will come to you and say, I need a report. I need a report. Okay. I
Yeah.
can give you that report, but will it really achieve what you're hoping to achieve? And so I would challenge them appropriately to understand, well, what is your true business objective? What
Right.
is how will this make your role or your day easier? How is this going to provide input to decision making? Okay, I hear you. So you actually don't need a report.
Sure.
You need this instead. And so, in doing so, in listening, but hearing those uncommunicated business requirements, it helped me shape and provide solutions, strategic solutions, some tactical solutions as well. But it was really building a relationship where I was exceeding the expectation that was set before me. And so that's how we were able to really shift from being order takers to being seen as partners. In certain spaces, again, is the caveat. It's where the business felt that there was an opportunity where they had a bit more autonomy to drive change. And that's how we were able to really shift the pendulum in those spaces. But it was a lot of understanding what the business needs and then translating that into business requirements. And I participated in quite a few RFPs, which I definitely encourage other BRMs to do where the opportunity exists, so that you are able to ask the right questions and strategically think if this is the right partner in the future.
Excellent. So that brings an interesting point, Tiffany, that if your business partner is tactical, how do you nudge them gently to become more strategic? Because I know sometimes there is an escalation, there is a fire that needs to be doused. So they want you to do tactical. And you really made a great point in terms of asking, you don't need a report, you need something else, So I don't see some of the BRM challenging the business partner because the business partner wants something immediately. So how do you nudge gently your business partner to start making them think strategic when their house is on fire?
Yeah, so obviously everyone wants to put out the fire. And now sitting on the other side of the fence, what I would say that an IT BRM can do to help a partner, a business partner, view things more strategically is to address the fire first. You can't avoid that because that's how you build trust and that's how you establish those relationships. But then the very next step after you've put out this fire is to have a conversation to understand, how did we even get to having a fire? What is the root cause of that? And by allowing that person to communicate, your business partner to communicate how they even got to the point of having a fire, you'll start to uncover that there's a lot of different inefficiencies potentially in the way in which they're currently operating. And so as a BRM, you can use that information to have more strategic conversations of, okay, well, I understand that now I'm uncovering why you've had this fire. I understand. And the fire could be that orders are not dropping to your warehouse partner for some reason.
Correct. No,
Right?
I think
That's a huge problem because if orders are not dropping to your warehouse partner, they cannot get things out the door because there's no visibility to it. And oftentimes with your partner, you have an SLA. So if you're dropping orders late to your warehouse partner, you're probably going to miss the SLA, which will impact your end customers because things can't, if the orders have dropped late, that means they're going to get picked, packed, and shipped late.
right.
And so as part of that, you can say, okay, I understand. Orders didn't drop to the warehouse. Let us do our investigation to understand why that happened. And you can, from there, peel back the layer to say, okay, well, was this a technology problem? Was it a process problem? And oftentimes it's a combination of the two. But what you can do is maybe put some methods in place to alert you, IT and or the business, on when there is potentially this particular instance of orders not dropping so that you can operate smarter and more efficiently with your time.
Right.
But it's really opportunities of where you have something that was very tactical to build the trust, but then to use that to have other healthy dialogue so that you can uncover where there might be other inefficiencies and then create a roadmap of sorts. And in creating a roadmap, it is being very open and honest on what is truly feasible and not over promising,
Sure.
because then it will undo everything that you've worked to build as relates to putting out fires. And then you become known as someone who can simply put out fires. And in that regard, you're an order taker.
Sure.
You're not a partner. You're not a strategic partner. So you have to take advantage of the opportunities to be an order taker, to build that trust and to be a tactical BRM, and use that as the catalyst to transform and become more of a strategic partner.
Sure. So how do you drive value where does not appear to be an opportunity? Because we do talk a lot about demand shaping, and really, when you don't even see any opportunities, how do you drive value? It's a very difficult proposition. So how do you deal with that?
Yeah, and it really ties to my previous answer of, oftentimes as a your business partners, again, now being on the side of the business partner, being on the side of the receiving entity, right? Um, we've lived with certain processes and maybe a reliance on Excel or other wonderful systems to run the business. And so by taking the time to walk through a day in the life of some of your key business partners, it will help you identify as a BRM where there is potential value realization, that at this point, you've just been kind of getting along with it, right? Your business partner has been doing it because the person who trained them this way, and it gets things done.
Right.
It's not the most efficient approach to doing so. And so what you can do is uncover and highlight, all right, well, anytime this, due to this particular process, business process that you may have, especially from a supply chain where there's a demand issue, which a lot of companies are currently having demand issues due to the pandemic and manufacturing being shut down. Um, and so now, because there are, sorry, not demand issues, but supply issues, my apologies. But now that there are supply issues that we've maybe not had to tackle before, there's a lot of manual processes that are put in place. Lots of different, potentially Excel documents that one is using to track because the system was not built to support that. And implementing these new supply management and supply planning practices offline, off system, right? It becomes just the way in which things are being done. But as a business partner, you can lean in and seek to understand, okay, well, this is what it means. As you continue to grow and build on this process is going to become more and more daunting. But what we can do is to create a business case to highlight where there is the value realization that can occur by this being more of an automated solution and how it's saving time and how it can allow for more real time decision making versus needing to check 3 or 4 different Excel documents potentially or waiting for someone to communicate something to you based on their tribal knowledge.
Right. No, that's great. So the last and final question would be, how do you get a seat at the table, right? I mean, everybody alludes that to get to the seat at the table. You did mention it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. But what are some of the specific things that as a BRM you should keep in place to get a seat at the table or earn a seat at the table?
Yeah. To earn a seat at the table, first, you have to do what you say you're going to do. You have to be accountable and you have to do the work to show that you're learning and that you know what you're talking about. So, as I mentioned, in my most recent experience of transitioning into the business, prior to doing so, I had spent essentially 4 years building a relationship where I was no longer seen as an order taker.
Right.
And so, as an order taker, I was always asking for information. I was the last person, IT was the last group to be identified as someone who should weigh in on how long something is going to take to do or how much it's going to cost, or even if it fits into the ecosystem that's already been established. And so I found myself scheduling meetings with no one attending or sending emails with no one really answering them.
Right.
And so what I did was I kind of barged my way in a bit, but I
Right.
positioned it as though this is to help ensure, acknowledge that there's an issue and that, hey, I understand, you've been sending things my way. In that regard, I'm being more reactive instead of proactive, which can impact your timeline. And so as a result, if you maybe gave me 30 minutes of your time possibly, and we talk through the things that you're wanting to do over the next maybe 6 months or a year, I can position it within the IT leadership to secure the right resources for you so that you will have your projects ready to start, fully staffed when you need them to be, when you're ready for them to be so. And so as part of doing that, it piques their interest because now you're coming to them to say, I can help you if you give me more information.
Right.
And then by actually taking that and doing what I said I'm going to do, whether that be I'm going to take this information from you and share it and socialize it and get back to you with an answer, not over promising, what's really feasible. I became a trusted resource because I was able to get ahead of the curve. I was able to get requests into the pipeline, which as a result allowed us where we needed to expand and improve our supply chain network as it relates to having distribution centers located in different locations to get product to the right people at the right time, or behind the scene processing just to make things work a bit more efficiently. So in getting a seat to the table is really being accountable, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
But positioning it so that you are able to say, these are the problems that we've had in the past. And this is what, by inviting me to the conversation, this is how it will benefit you.
Absolutely. So thanks so much, Tiffany, for being with us today and sharing your valuable insights on BRM in supply chain. I hope that people can get a lot of more inspiration from you, what you have told about it. And the last and final thing as we just wrap it up, um, what do you think? What is a call of action for BRMs who are getting into supply chain? Are there any kind of do's and don'ts that you would advise for people
Yeah,
to keep in mind?
of course. The call to action and the do is to really understand what is the trend currently. What are some of the key challenges, not at your company, but outside of the four walls, the virtual four walls of your company? Because then that will be a good foundational knowledge base and starting point for you to say, okay, well, this is what's happening everywhere else.
Right.
And so then you can check the box or go down kind of a checklist to say, are we doing these things or do we have it on our radar as something that should be addressed?
Excellent.
So it's really understanding what everyone else is doing. So then when you go back and you learn what you're actually doing, you'd be able to identify those gaps and opportunities a lot sooner versus becoming an expert. Oftentimes, when you focus just on the new task that you're assigned, you have tunnel vision and you can't see anything else. Then you fall into that rabbit hole and that iterative cycle of I'm doing what I was taught to do. This is the process. This is how it happens. But if you start by benchmarking, if you start by doing research to understand what new capabilities are out there, what new companies exist where you can maybe have um, an expanded distribution network. Where do other companies have their manufacturing across the world? Where, what has been my journey as a customer? Does the company that I work for and the solutions that I'm trying to implement, is it as seamless as what I see at maybe Best Buy or in Ulta or any or Amazon, who everyone is competing with in this case? So that would be number one. That would be the main thing. And the call to action of what not to do is to accept the current way of doing things. Um, Customers, our consumers are wanting things faster than ever. And you need to understand how best to get there. And yes, the current processes and business enablement is set up to help you get there, but are you going to be a follower or are you going to be a leader? Are you going to shift the paradigm and be seen as a strategic partner because I've gone outside and done my homework and research and I can come back to my employer, right, and say, and my business partners and say, this is what everyone else is doing. We need to try to catch up to them and then we need to pass them. But if you come in and you only think about, well, let me just get to know what's happening here, you'll definitely be positioning yourself to not be a strategic partner and to not grow with the business and continue to truly operate reactively instead of proactively.
Awesome, awesome conversation, Tiffany. We could actually talk for us. Thank you so much for taking your time today and sharing your valuable insights. I'm sure that we will hear a lot more comments and feedback around that. And I appreciate you taking the time and building a single global BRM community. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so very much. Have a good one. Have a great day.